You know I've traveled near and far, see the shining sea. I've seen a lot of places and people that were nice to me. One place that's in my heart, and this is how I feel. I'm talking about my hometown, Fayetteville. She's nestled in the sand hills on a river called Cakefield. Special to so many who proudly served our country here. She was named for Lafayette and known for cotton mills. I'm talking about my hometown, Fayetteville. My hometown, Fayetteville. I'm so proud to be from here. It don't take long when you're away from home to find out how you feel. It's always good to come home to Fayetteville. Babe Ruth hit his first one, heard around the world. Sherman marched with the Union and burned the arsenal. Old Market House still standing, but stands for freedom's will. I'm talking about my hometown, Fayetteville. My hometown, Fayetteville. I'm so proud to be from here. It don't take long when you're away from home to find out how you feel. It's always good to come home to Fayetteville, my all-American city, Fayetteville. Talking about my hometown, Fayetteville.
Good evening and welcome to the October 18th, 2016 specially called meeting of the Fayetteville City Council. At this time, I'd like to ask everyone to please stand and remain standing through the invocation and the Pledge of Allegiance. Councilmember Jim Arp will do the invocation.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Let us pray. Most gracious Heavenly Father, we're so blessed to live in a city like Fayetteville. And we just want to thank you and acknowledge your ever-ending mercy and ever-ending salvation, and just to show the gratitude that we have that through a tremendous storm, that you shepherded our city and our community through it, and that, Lord, even though we've experienced great loss of personal property and possessions, we have the most valuable things in life, and that's our life and each other. And so we ask, Lord, as we begin the process of healing and going through this recovery period, that, Lord, that you would give us wisdom, that you would help us to be wise in how we do this, and that, Lord, that we would be very good stewards of the money that you've entrusted us with, and that we would meet the needs of those who are in greatest need, and that we would help them in their time of need, and that we would reach out and continue to do the wonderful things that we've experienced this past week through your love, and that is neighbors helping neighbors and reaching out and helping each other clean up and repair homes and businesses and get back to a normal way of life. So, Lord, we acknowledge that even in the greatest storms of life, you walk with us, you oversee us, you protect us, and we thank you for the protection that you gave our city. And now for our neighbors down in Lumberton and Hope Mills and all the communities east that have experienced such tremendous loss, we ask that you would continue to bless them and to watch them and to help them in their great time of need. And Lord, through it all, let your name be praised and honored. For it's in the name of Jesus that we pray. Amen. allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Councilmember Art. I would like to recognize North Carolina House member, Mr. Billy Richardson's joining us this evening. Welcome, Billy. Glad to have you. Council, at this time, 4.0 is the approval of the agenda. I'll entertain a motion. That's Mayor Pro Tem, seconded by Councilmember Wright. Any discussion? Seeing none, Council, I'll ask for your vote, please. That's unanimous by members present. Madam Clerk. Item 5.0 is the Hurricane Matthew response and recovery updates. I will turn the mic over to Councilmember Mayor Pro Tem Mitch Colvin, who called the meeting.
Mr. Mayor, thank you so much. Welcome, everyone. I thought the purpose of the meeting tonight was to ensure the citizens, as well as to get guidance from a very competent and capable staff and the other partners on the state and federal levels, to make sure that we are all working in concert as we have been during this epic tragedy that our community has faced. Our initial meeting, Mayor and Council, on Monday was 2 days following the initial event, in which we basically gave the citizens, we were concentrating on response, and we had to tell the citizens what our plan was. The purpose of today's meeting was to kind of follow up to that. Wanted to have staff lay out a few areas of discussion that we sent the list out previous to the meeting, some of the key points and areas that we were going to discuss, and I think the city manager has his staff prepared to do that. But as we know, although we were considered a national disaster area, all disasters are local, and our citizens are looking for us for guidance and leadership during this time, and so we want to make sure that we're working with the best and best use of our resources and information. So with that, I'll turn it over to Mr. Hewitt.
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem, Mayor, members of council. You are correct. Tonight we have your amazing city staff here to provide you and the public with updates on our response to and recovery from Hurricane Matthew. Tonight we're also joined by our friends and colleagues at the state, Mr. Joe Stanton, who's the Assistant Director and Chief Recovery Officer for Emergency Management and the North Carolina Department of Public Safety, as well as FEMA Representative Joe Gerard, and both of them as well are here and available to answer any questions that you might have. To kind of set the stage, though, the city staff and I met earlier today, and also reflecting upon the questions and interest of council that we received via email, as well as personal conversations with you. We've arranged tonight's presentations in the following order. We'd like to start with Rob Stone, who's going to cover broadly a lot of transportation issues and facilities issues. We'd like to next move to Michael Gibson, who, in addition to being able to give updates on the Parks and Rec, but also the city's shelter, which is currently at Westover, but also on the city facilities, how we've been able to adapt and respond to the challenges of Hurricane Matthew and in the following week. Then I would like Victor Sharp to come up and talk to you about housing and some of our community development programs, which we feel may be brought to bear to assist us in our response and full recovery of Hurricane Matthew. And as a kind of a wrap-up, and to cover other topics, including debris removal, and answer any broad questions that you might have, they'll be followed by Scott Bullard, who will then also reintroduce our guest here from the state and FEMA to answer any questions that you might have. And we've reserved time, we hope at the end, for council to provide us with any guidance that you might have on issues or areas which we did not cover thus far. But with that, unless there are any questions, I'd ask Rob Stone to come up, and I've asked staff to make the presentations brief to reserve time for your questions, as well as our folks from, friends from the state and from FEMA too.
Mayor, Council, good evening. Talk real quick about some of the impacts we had. Remember Monday we brought up a lot of the roadways, and I think you've seen the update, or the update we've had been providing. Got some additional conversation with that. One thing I did want to stress real fast as we talk about the hurricane effects, there's several things we're talking about here. One of them is we're having issues with groundwater now also. And groundwater, of course, is water where the water table is rising just from the amount of rain. When you think about the amount of rain we've had in 1 week period, it was almost over 30 inches, which is unprecedented. The other issue we have is floodwaters. Floodwaters is when anything leaves the banks that it's not usually, such as creeks and rivers and streams. So that's where we had a major impact of those. And also, and last but not least, of course, stormwater. And that's where we have our infrastructure in place to try to direct the water that falls out of the sky and off our infrastructure and get it out of the city without flooding. So that was, just want to make sure there's those distinctions that we have been talking about. Real quick, here's the major roads that are still impacted. Shawcroft Road Culvert, Sipple Avenue, which is the Rayconda Upper Dam, Greenock Avenue, which is the Aaron Lakes Dam, Offing Drive Culvert, North Cool Springs Street Bridge, Mirror Lake Road Dam, and Sykes Pond Road Culvert. Real quick, this is the Shawcroft Road Culvert. One of the main issues with this one is the only access for Kings Grant. This was right after the culvert. What we're currently doing, the temporary access provided through private property. When the when the culvert first blew out, that's what was going on. There was a private construction interest in the back of the development. That was the only access provided. The neighboring church provided access and permission, and we have actually laid a temporary street through the property and the back side of the church to provide access for that, and that actually opened up on the 14th. So we are now working on a process to replace that culvert. Right now, the estimate we have is about 6 months. Part of the issue, and you'll hear this on several of these, this is just an estimate at this time. Once we get out of the emergency conditions, we have to go back through regular permitting processes. And when you start dealing with culverts and dams, that it can be very lengthy. And I think we're estimating on this, just the permitting part of this is going to be about 3 months by itself. So, of course, the challenge is only access to the neighborhood. We're looking over 600 houses for this one. Of course, utility coordination, we've been working with our utility partners and getting all those. And as I mentioned, was the permitting. Sipple Avenue, which was a Rayconda Upper Dam. The pictures there, you can see where it washed out. Again, temporary access provided through private property right now. It's Ancon is a city street up to the edge of the dam. That was an existing dam that was there. Temporary access is being given. It was really for pedestrians only. I think there are vehicles using it one at a time, with the homeowners association allowing vehicles to come across. The current dam breach is under construction. We found out early, I think it was Monday morning, that we would be allowed to replace that culvert as an emergency situation. So we went in, or put a culvert in and leave it as a breach situation. So we went in there real fast, got a contractor. They've been working. I was not there today, but from what I have seen, they're making very good progress on that. So we're happy with that. And also, we're trying to accelerate the plan for the Pinewood Terrace extension. If you recall, that was already a project we had on the CIP to extend a road from opposite where the VA hospital ties in now, that current signal, move it in. We were hoping to have that done fairly quickly, to have at least a temporary access even before the culvert was finished constructed. The contractor there has run into a major issue with groundwater in that area, and he's having to do a lot of undercut. So that project, he's still getting us at the 31st to provide emergency access. We have concerns with that date, so we're still hoping he can meet that, but we have concerns with that we might not meet that at this time. We'll know more as we get more into it this week. The challenges, again, is only access to the neighborhood, over 300 homes in that. Again, the same issue with utility coordination and permitting once we get to actually doing a permanent fix. Here's Greenock Avenue, which is the Aaron Lakes Dam. The difference with this is a private lake and dam with public road. One of the good news on this is there's actually access on both sides, so we didn't trap anyone in this as we did with Kings Grant and Rayconda. This was once a very beautiful dam and a very beautiful lake, so you see what happened once the dam was breached. Right now, we're assessing damage to the roadway, developing a repair plan. There's 3 options here. First is removing debris and stabilize, and then road repair and breach, and road repair and dam repair. And again, that's a private dam. We're working with a contractor to look at these options. The challenges we had to, the lake drain, as you saw in the pictures, the dam failed. Doing again, it's still the same issues, utility coordination and permitting. Offing Drive is another one we lost. That was actually a culvert. These pictures here. Right now, we're assessing the damage to the roadway and the size of the culvert. The good news is that a culvert appears to be intact, so it may not be as long a repair as we thought it was, so we're in that process. Same issues as utility coordination and permitting. This is North Cool Spring Street Bridge, which is just downtown. Major devastation here, and you see in the background that was the Old Mill Art location, and it actually detached and fell into the roadway or into the river. This is since the water receded. We took another picture there, so you can still see the very extensive damage to the roadway there. Currently assessing the damage to the roadway and bridge. We've got some initial reports. The bridge may be repairable, so we'll get more in that as we get into that. That's the good news. If that is, we just go into a roadway repair plan. If the bridge needs replacement, it's a whole nother level, debris removal, stabilization plan until the funding can be set aside for that. Again, the good news is there's access on both sides of the roadway, and still the same challenges we have. Also here we have Mirror Lake Dam. Still the same thing, currently assessing damage to the roadway and the dam. On this one, the dam appears to be intact, so we just lost the inside where the water went over the top and scoured out the back side of the dam. Repair plan in progress. The state dam safety required us to lower the lake, so we actually went in there and put a small breach in that to lower the lake. They were concerned about the dam's ability and the pressure that water was putting on that, so we had to go in there, let it out slowly, so we wouldn't cause any downstream flooding, but still the same challenges. The last one we were still working on was Sykes Pond Road, and if you'll remember, this actually happened from the previous week's flooding we had. This is, at the time, was the only flooded road, only roadway we had that we lost during that storm. We're still assessing the size of the culvert needed right now, and it looks like we'll just be replacing that culvert. Again, we have the same issues with the utility coordination and permitting. And that's all I had on the road. Real quick, what our street maintenance group is doing now, they're starting in the interior. They're going off to looking at the major roadways where we have major debris and trying to get that up with the help of a contractor, and also with Mike Gibson as the Park and Recs group. They are street sweeping also, and again radiating. They have regions out. They're radiating from the center of town. The issue we have, there's a lot of culverts, basins, and our drainage system is full of sediment where the water top and filled up with sediment. So there's extensive work on that. We're talking to a contractor about getting an additional jet rod truck where we can go in and clean that out. The problem is the one we usually use is out of Pembroke, and of course he was flooded. So we've got another one that we have used in the past in Pittsburgh that we're talking to them. So hopefully we can get a lot of major amount of sediment out of these basins as we move forward. Currently, we have just on the street sweeping itself, we've had about 1,000 cubic yards of material that we have just in street sweeping. So it's a lot of debris out there. So,
Mr. Stone,
Yes,
I want to go to council. Council, if I can ask you maybe, because we've got so much on the agenda tonight, if we can just hold it to one round of questions. Make sure you press your light so I can recognize you. Mr. Crisp.
So, Mr. Stone, it looks like everybody has a suitable way in and out, maybe temporary, with the exception of Sipple,
yes, sir.
Raconda.
Yes, sir.
Now, I'm getting a lot of individual emails from citizens there. And I just want to make sure that we are, on a daily basis, updating the homeowners association with what's going on, time limits to all of those kinds of things.
Yes, sir. And Giselle Rodriguez with our engineering department, she's been in contact with the homeowner association president, Mr. Freddie Riviere, and he's actually here. But anytime we have a change in scheduling law, we try to make sure they're aware of it. And we're actually out on a daily basis looking at the existing Ancon dam that's used, just so we feel comfortable, again, to make sure that we see no materials leaving that dam.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Mr. Crisp. Mayor Pro Tem Colvin.
Mr. Stone, I appreciate it. Since I have one round, I might throw you a couple snippets. Gillespie Street, I didn't hear anything on that. Maybe you can touch that when you get
Let's see. Yes, sir. Gillespie Street is actually a city street, and right now they have The date we had from DOT was November 2016, I'm sorry, State Road. That we have from NCDOT is November of this month, so next month is what they're looking at having that completed.
Okay, and on the, some of the repairs, I know you and city manager are probably still working through who's gonna pay what or what's reimbursable. Anything that you know from a high-level point of view about how, if there are any state resources to help back with the roads that are maintained by the city, or is that completely a city? Or if there's any eligibility for FEMA? That may be a question for
I'll have to rely on that.
them. Okay, and finally, on the, for preparedness in the future, I know private dams are regulated by the state, if I'm not mistaken, but the impact of them when they fail usually fall on us with additional water, flooding, some of the stuff that we've seen that followed the storm itself. Is there any way to tighten up the communication with the state, Dina or whomever, from our office, so that we can kind of keep an eye on the regulation of those private dams?
They do a good job. They keep us informed of anything. As we mentioned before, previously, any earthen dam that has traffic on it is considered high hazard. They had labeled, in fact, that's the reason we were doing the Piney Terrace extension, was because of the Sipple Road had been considered a high hazard. But they do a good job of doing regular reviews of that. Again, this was one of those once in a lifetime, I hope we never see it again type events that was it just overtopped the majority of the facilities we had in the city. Yes, sir.
Mr. Deviere.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Mayor Pro Tem already hit one of them with Gillespie. What about Washington Drive? And I'll go ahead and hit my neighbor here on Bingham Drive as well, Washington Street.
Washington Street, right now, we're thinking that's simply where the water worked its way under the pavement and buckled the pavement. We think we'll have that open by the end of this month. So just a couple more weeks, we should have. I think the last date I had was around the 28th is what we were shooting for as a target date. And you said also, Bingham. Yes, sir. Again, that's a state maintained roadway. Right now, what we have is, as anticipated, was May of 2017.
And then the last question I have, our presentation is great. I appreciate all the pictures. Is there a matrix that's that we're kind of tracking them all, and it's simple, where we can see the date, November 17th or something like that? That kind of gives us a quick snapshot overview, so that we can kind of keep up with it as citizens are asking us.
Sure, on the
and that we can publish, more importantly, on our website, so we can just refer them to it.
I know we have this particular sheet. It was in the daily update. I think that you're getting that, and I'm not sure where it's going. I know you're.
That's where I'm leading.
I'll have to ask Kevin. I'm not sure where it's going from that point. Okay. Yes, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Ms. Jensen.
Good evening, Mr. Stone. First of all, I wanted to thank you for all the work that you did out on Shawcroft and keeping everybody calm, and the urgency that you did, that we did get another way out. Very proud to be part of the city when y'all came out and helped us. The one question that I do have is that you said it would be about 6 months until it would get repaired. Are the new permits that are coming, is it going, because when it was built for the neighborhood, I think there was maybe 200 homes in the neighborhood, and now we're over 600, so I'm assuming that they're going to, for the permits, it'll be for the 600 homes.
Absolutely.
Which will take more time. Instead of just fixing what we had, we have to make sure that it's right for the neighborhood as it is today.
Absolutely, and part of that's the requirements of the state that we have to make, and we're hoping that we can shorten some of that time. We're hoping that we can do some of this in conjunction. I think we were able to do that in the past, that they were able to work with us, so we were doing the work as we were getting the permitting, knowing that as long as we know the direction we need to be in, and we're not violating any of the state rules, that we can maybe do that at the same time and shorten that time up a little bit.
So for the record, I just wanted it to be known that you have to upgrade it because there's more homes, and that takes more time.
And just the standards have increased over the years also.
Right.
Yes, sir.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Wright.
Yes, we have a briefing from FEMA, someone that represents FEMA, but they're not up yet, so that's later on. So, most of my questions are for FEMA, and then I just had information about churches, Mr. Mayor, who's giving services and the dates, and I can give that out later.
And Mr. Hurst.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. As a follow-up on Councilmember Deviere, it would be helpful to have the estimated dates. We have them, but for our citizens. And so on that, everything's pretty much May 1st, 2017, except you said Offing Drive. Looks like it'll be sooner, as well as Sipple Avenue, and the feedback regarding Gillespie, Washington, and Bingham. So just getting that out for us to get to the public would be great. Thank you.
Sir.
Thank you, Rob.
And one of the other things too that city manager also mentioned was maybe we could put some type of sign around where we have barricades that we're actually closed off, that we'd have a sign that say, give you a website that you can go to and get this information also, so that way maybe it would help anyone at the locations. Yes.
Okay, that's all
right.
the questions.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Stone. Mr. Hewitt. Welcome, Mr. Gibson.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. See, Rob didn't fix this for me. All righty here. Let me see, which one is mine here? Oh, okay. All right. I won't belabor the point, but from a Parks and Recreation and Maintenance standpoint, most of our damage is probably along any creek that we had a park next to it. One of the things that we wanted to do was try to get our major facilities back up and running. Some of the pictures that I have here, there's a festival park that had some major damage to it. We've been working out there for the past couple of weeks, trying to make sure that we could get it back up. There's some major events coming up in the next couple of weeks, and probably for all the way through to October, the end of October up into November. And from here you can see what the parking lot looked like during the major flood, some of the debris that was floated up at the park, and how the bank eroded from Festival Park Plaza coming into the park, and how high the water level was. Right now, that's the way the bridge looked. As of today, it's clean. We've had some engineering look at it and make sure that it's still structurally sound. We believe that we'll get it back up and running this weekend for some events, and it may not be as pretty as it normally is, but it'll be functional, and all of the infrastructure is up and going. Here is the Linear Park. It just goes to show you, this is the fountain, and we had to hand dig that out. There's probably about 6 to 8 tons of sand inside the fountain. We should have that back up and running in Linear 1, hopefully by Friday afternoon. Linear Park took some tremendous damage. Here is Cross Creek. This is one of the ones where you could see it on television, where they had to rescue the gentleman from the SUV. The fountain took a tremendous amount of damage. We've gotten it cleaned up. The motors that are in most of the fountains, they were underwater, so we're having to let them dry out and then get them re-armored from the factories. One of the pictures on the bottom is the Cross Creek Bridge going into Lafayette. That's one of the bridges that we have to get an engineer to make sure that that's still structurally sound before we allow anybody to go across it or repair it. We're waiting on a structural engineer to get loose. One of the things I wanted to talk about here is how we're going to be working with PwC, because they have a lot of structural damage on some of their sites where they've had some slough off, and you'll see a picture here of one that we're going to have to really get some help with. But this is over next to the lawyer's office, the bottom picture where it says the road eroded. PwC and Parks and Recreation have repaired that pretty well. Here's the main one that we were talking about with the structural damage, a Linear Park behind 280, along the Little Cross Creek going into the river. You can see where that whole bank has just sloughed off. That'll take some engineering to get it back up and running. We'll probably have to drive some piles, but PWC has had some issues, so we're going to try to get some economy of scale. While they got their guy in town working, we take advantage of him being here and getting our work done before he leaves town. This is the Maiden Lane Park that we just put in a couple of months ago. That's probably about 8 to 10 inches of water, 10 feet of water there. It receded, and we got it cleaned up, and it's back functional. The kids are still are playing in it now. They did a tremendous job getting it back the way it to use. This is Veterans Park. Exactly, it's but it's the visual audio visual equipment is not up and running, but the park itself, the same thing. You won't see any water running for a while because all the pumps were underground, and those tanks, those boxes or cabinets filled up with water. So we're having to take all of that loose and take them out and get them rearmored and so that they can run again. That'll take a while because those are some big pumps under the ground. But from a visual standpoint, the park is walkable, it's usable. Inside the building, we had water damage up to about 2 to 3 feet. That's usable. Some of the doors, the wooden doors swole, but it's usable. There wasn't that much impact on damage. This is one that's sort of amazing. I think they did a story on this. Even though there were 3 feet of water inside that building, we have this missing man table that everybody was amazed that. I don't understand how those hats and didn't move from that chair or that table. Nothing was just a little bit of sediment on the table, but evidently that table floated to the top of the water and then just floated back down. But none of the hats, we didn't stage this at all, so everybody was amazed at how this happened. So be careful. Prayer works. We've combined both of our shelters. We had Smith Recreation Center and Kiwanis Recreation Centers as shelters working with Red Cross. Now we've consolidated those 2 shelters into one. From what I understand now, and I'm sure Scott will update you even more, that we only have 1 shelter now, which is Westover, and we're about 44 to 45 people in there. Hoping to, since FEMA's in town, to get them situated where they no longer have to be in this rec center, and the rec center can go back to use. That's all I have right there. We had, from a building standpoint, 339 Alexander, 335 Alexander, and 333 Alexander, which sits on the Blunt's Creek trail. The Blunt's Creek had some heavy damage. We've got a contract or an RFP out for 339 and 335. We need to get some more information on what we're going to do with 333 because it was under a lot of water. So we don't want to spend a ton of money, but we need to get the engineering and infrastructure and the traffic services people back up and running. So 339 and 335, we've got contractors already looking at it. We need to make some amendments to the RFP because we have to do some code updates on bathrooms and ADA accessibility. But we assume that will be done quickly and that those buildings should be up and running in the next month or so. So that's the extent of our building damage. I think one of the things that we wanted to make sure that we talked about or said is that our partners that we've been working with over the last 2 to 3 weeks with Red Cross, the Animal Control, the school system, PWC, DOT, without being able to have good conversations with people, I don't think that we would have been able to recover or react as fast as we did. So we always want, especially from my standpoint, because I depend on so many people, that those relationships were even fortified even more over the last 2 weeks. That's my story. Any questions?
Yep. It's not that easy.
I know. Yes,
We'll
sir.
start again with Mr. Crisp.
Mr. Gibson, what's the story on this building? I see some humongous generators out back. Where are we on this building?
Well, this building is back on power. We bought those generators in. The reason that we bought those generators was to power Smith Recreation Center, because that building or that recreation center is designated by the state as a evacuation center for the coast. So we wanted to make sure that we could energize the building totally in case it was long-term. Once we met that requirement, this building went down, all the power went down downtown. So that morning or that afternoon, we just moved that generator over. PwC wasn't sure of when they could bring this building back on full power, so we just hooked it up. Then we were still unsure if we could power the whole building, so we bought a bigger generator in to make sure that City Hall ran. But we're on full power now.
Thank you. Mr. Hurst.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. And Mr. Gibson, Alexander Street, extensive damage to the buildings. Quite a bit of city operations are out of that street. Someone had told me perhaps one of the buildings would be condemned, but that has not been assessed yet.
No, sir, that would be 333.
Okay. So where are they operating out of now?
We have temporary housing here in the old HRD training for their main office, 339. We've moved the traffic services people out of 333, and they're sharing 335. But that's why we're pushing so hard to get 2 of the 3 buildings out and contractors in. One of the biggest things that we have to be careful about, because they were flooded, is mold. So we need to make sure that we don't fix it and then have another problem, 6 months from now. So mold remediation is something that we're looking into to make sure that the contractor fulfills that obligation.
And the time frame again?
Well, hopefully they're out there looking now. We need to make a couple of amendments to the RFP. We're looking at 4 to 6 weeks to make sure that we're up and running, and Rob can get back to doing what he does.
Thank you.
Mr. Deviere.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Again, just the same way we talked to Rob, just that matrix that kind of lists all our facilities and kind of a status and more importantly, a time when they're going to be back operational. And I know there's priority levels of the parks, and ones are at different stages. But, seeing an MLK park that has trees down, I know that's a lower priority with just trees down and not water damage, but just being able to see a master sheet that our citizens can see as well to let us know where the timing of the, parks are and at what stages they are would be helpful. So,
Yes, sir.
thank you.
Mr. Wright.
I want to talk to you about the shelters, and the question I have is, those emergency shelters, were they adequate? And long-term, do we still have people in the centers right now? How's that working right now?
Well, as far as our rec centers doubling up as shelters when we're in a crisis, they work well. One of the things that we're going to do, and the city manager has said we need to, long-term, as Mayor Pro Tem has said, we need to go ahead and adapt them with what they call transfer switches. Right now, what we have on those rec centers are basic generators, smaller ones, where we can cut the lights on and you can see, but we can't fully energize them. So one of the things that we're going to be working with PwC over the next probably year is to go ahead and designate the 2 that we know we have to do is put on transfer switches, and then basically enter into a contract with a generation company like Gregory Poole, that all they have to do now is do what we did. It was a little cumbersome this time. We got ahead of it a little bit, but even City Hall, definitely the police department, but we need to go ahead and make that decision and put those transfer switches where a company can just back up a huge generator, plug it in, and it works just like it was fully energized by PwC. That is an issue. That'll be a number that we'll have to talk about and how we phase that in to make sure that we're not, wishing and hoping over the next major crisis. But as far as those rec centers functioning for people to come in and not live as well, but to be able to have some kind of decency, they work well.
Very good. This may be just for the council or city manager, but the statement is that I had a lot of residents talk about the inadequacy of hotels, that some went in for emergencies, that they went into the hotels, the bathrooms were full of water, it was filthy, the children couldn't stay. I heard a lot of complaints about that. So I was thinking to the council or the city manager that, when hotels are built here in the city, they ask for incentives, tax breaks and things of that nature. Can we put a policy in place, and a part of that incentive would be, in case of emergencies like we've had disasters, can those hotels be used as emergency shelters temporarily, and make that a part of that policy or part of that? How can we do that? Or
we will look at that, sir. One of the things that Joe Girard may bring with when he comes up to discuss with FEMA, if they are issuing, if this is before the storm, or if this is during the storm or after the storm, I think that there may be some quality of hotels that receive that hotel voucher that FEMA would give out. They have standards, but clearly any hotel in the city that someone experienced something like that before the storm or during the storm, where they were filthy, that's something that we can refer to the health department as well as our own code enforcement folks may be able to lend something to that as well. But we'll be happy to look at that.
I'll get with you on that. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Wright. Mayor Pro Tem.
Mr. Gibson, I know this is, I'm asking this question for the citizens. Being that everything is kind of off schedule, what about those rec centers like Westover, for example, and the activities that it has? Have you put out a schedule or a new date of activities that were planned? What has been the contingency plan, and how can we get it to the public if there were scheduled activities there that of course don't have the same level of priority as this emergency situation? But I'm just trying to communicate a message to them, kind of similar to the county when they give you the new schedule for the sports activities and that kind of thing.
Well, one of the things that we're sort of blessed with is that we have no indoor activities going on right now. So we're in football season, so most of the activity is outside the rec. There are some day-to-day things with the indoor facility as far as weightlifting and people walking and those kinds of things, and those classes have been discontinued for a period of time. All the other rec centers are functioning the way that they should, but Westover, we've contacted all of the contractors that work inside and all the programming. From the youth standpoint, because we're having football and cheerleading, they won't be affected too much. In about 4 or 5 weeks, once we get to basketball season, we might have if we can't find an alternative, there might be a few misunderstandings. But we're going to get that word out as quickly as we can.
A few misunderstandings. That was nice. Mr. Gibson, that's all the questions we've got for you.
Thank you so much.
Oh, wait a minute. I'm sorry. Ms. Jensen.
Yes, ma'am.
I just have a quick question. I've heard everybody talk about getting information out, and I was going to ask, is there any way that we can get this information and put it on Fay TV, so at least, it can come out, and how we have the circle going on all the information that we're asking for and what we've done tonight? Just put like a slide of maybe what's going on at Westover.
Mm-hmm.
So things like that the citizens need to know. Just another avenue.
It may be smart to be able to take those daily updates that we're getting and punch them into slides and be able to just run the slides over Fay
That
TV.
would work.
Councilmember Art.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I was going to wait to the end to bring this up, but a communications plan is essential. One of the key issues that we had during the storm was people felt like there wasn't a good flow of information in some regards, and many of us took it upon ourselves to share information through Facebook and Twitter. And I would suggest that as we do this, Mr. Manager, and continue forward, it's really important that we have transparency. I think it would be very valuable for all the information on the neighborhoods that were affected, Rayconda, Aaron Lakes, Van Story, Kings Grant, all those neighborhoods that on our website, we clearly have information, and it should be updated in a systematic manner so that people can go to the website. But equally, I think it would be good to post Twitter post and also Facebook post. And right now, one of the problems is the information that's coming out in the daily brief is so big, you can't really get it out on Twitter or you can't get it out on Facebook. So it might be better to break it down into bite-sized pieces. Because that's a lot of people communicate that way now through social media. And if we can get that information out to them, I think it would be very valuable. And then the other piece of that is I think the Fay TV is a great idea. But we got to keep the website up to date. And I went on the website last night and it wasn't up to date. And if we're going to post an update for the hurricane, a Hurricane Matthew update, and we're going to send it out, then the website should reflect that update as well. Thank you.
I'm sure that's all the lights this time. Thank you. Mr. Sharp.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor, members of council.
Good evening.
I wanted to just talk a little bit about some of the activities that the Community Development Department has been involved in and some opportunities that we may have to assist in the recovery from the storm. We have been working with our continuum of care, providing an updated list daily on housing vacancies, apartments, houses that are available for rent. Some of the property owners have specials for waiving administrative fees and for 3-month temporary leasing opportunities. We have asked the public for that, and we continue to update that list, and we've made it available to FEMA and other groups that are working with folks to try to find available housing for temporary relocation. Also, we do have an opportunity to use some of our community development, block grant, and home investment partnership funds for disaster recovery. I have, with our staff, identified approximately $900,000 that we could use to reprogram to meet unmet needs as a result of Hurricane Matthew. This would require, because of the activity, it would require a substantial amendment to be made to our annual action plan, which we will be looking for guidance from council if you're interested in us moving forward with that and the type of activities. Staff will prepare an action plan amendment. There is a citizen participation process that we have to follow. However, we can get a waiver of that 30-day required review and public comment period to 10 days. And then we would bring that after the review back to council for adoption of that amendment and then submit that amendment to HUD. I am in conversation with HUD, and they have provided us guidance and information on some of our options that we have. Then the last part of it is we are hoping that at some point in time there will be an appropriation of Congress for CDBG disaster recovery funds. When I talked with our HUD folks today, that is not current a conversation. So any insight that you all may have with our delegation to see if there will be any appropriation of CDBG dollars for disaster recovery, because that takes an act of Congress just for events as they come up. And so that's what we're doing, and we're looking for guidance from council as to how you would like to move forward, and as to whether or not we would want to reprogram those funds. When I mentioned the $900,000, part of those funds are general funds, and the other funding sources is CDBG and home.
I do have a couple of questions. Councilmember Arp.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you, Victor, for that update. Now that we've gone through the process, security and safety is the first requirement in a disaster, and I want to applaud our police and fire department for a really, really wonderful job in helping us with that. But now it's about getting families back into some sense of normalcy, making sure that they have adequate housing. And so the question I had asked earlier in the week was, are we working with other agencies in the county to identify opportunities for people with short-term leases on apartments and houses based on the size of the family? And if so, are we looking at, can there be an attempt to help waive deposits and fees, and maybe even work with PwC on how we can waive some connection fees for these people while they're displaced? Are we working on that?
And that's the housing resource guide that I had mentioned. We have made that available as we receive from the apartment association, managers association. We've reached out to those different groups, and we get in information daily, and we update that list daily, and we have provided that. And some of them had specials that they were offering for a short term. One of our goals was to make sure that housing was available, and as FEMA provided assistance, we would meet any unmet needs, down the road. So that's what we've done so far.
How about the ability to waive some of the connection fees with PwC? Have we discussed that with Mr. Trago and his staff?
No, we have not, sir.
Okay, yeah. I can update later on. Okay, thank you, Dave. I think that would be important.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Mr. Arp. Mr. Colvin.
Mr. Sharp, I appreciate it. As you know, I had been working with you to try to figure out what gaps we could help fill by, a number of ways. One, amending your department and some of the programs you have to maybe expand it, because you know that the economic recovery is now an important part of what we're facing to try to get our citizens back up and moving economically. As you look at this, I have a couple of questions. One, if you utilize or repurpose the money that you're showing, the $900,000, is a portion of that reimbursable at that same 75% ratio? If it's used for recovery efforts, I guess that may be a city manager finance question. Or
it would not be. Basically, HUD's guidance is to, as we said before, to try to use FEMA's funding first for what they make available. And the goal is to come in with long-term solutions, although you could do short-term solutions, but it's not reimbursable. It's just where we would be utilizing funding from the federal government that we already have available.
And speaking on the disaster recovery funds that you mentioned, now that would be new funds or new dollars flushed into your department if Congress approves.
That's correct.
Approves that, okay. And finally, I guess there'll be some kind of specifics laid into this because I know I had been talking to the city manager, and I know you guys have been stretched thin, and I think you're doing a great job with it, but I guess you'll give council some specifics as to which programs you're looking to expand and how we can.
Right, and I could just give you an idea of what programs that 900,000 constitutes. We just recently, council just recently adopted the targeted area revitalization program. We have scheduled, we're in the process of scheduling meetings, and we're on track with moving that forward. However, that would be a portion of those funds that have not been obligated. Funds that have been obligated, of course, we're not able to utilize those with the organization. So that's $353,000. $200,000 is available from one of our affordable housing developments that did not get funded of home funds. Another $107,000. At the end of June, we realized we had additional program income that could be repurposed of CDBG funds. And then in the general fund, affordable housing fund, those funds could be repurposed as well. And those four areas is what totals that $900,000. So it really will be council's guidance to us as to whether or not you wanted to reprogram those funds and come up with ways to meet unmet needs that we may have out there today.
When you think you'll get back to us on something so council can?
Well, I need to hear from council in terms of if you're interested in us moving forward so that we can prepare an amendment.
No, I guess what I'm asking is when will we see a breakdown so that we can make a decision about telling you whether to move forward? Is this as detailed as it's going to get?
I can forward that to the manager, and we can get that out to you, but that, as I just mentioned, those four, there are four pots of funds, and we can break that down to you and send that, send that to you.
Councilmember Wright.
Victor, my concern is with the affordable housing units. I know that within the last year or so, you guys been really doing a great job with putting up new affordable housing in those areas for low income. But I know in a lot of areas those houses were flooded out, and I've heard recently that some of those houses have to be torn down. And let me know if that's the case. And also for those people that are out of those houses, affordable houses that had low income in the first place, where are they now? How long will they be out, and how long would it take to rebuild? And if you can, those monies, I'm sure some of the council have already talked to you about how we're going to structure it and rebuild. Or will affordable housing units, that money, this out of this 900,000, will that be a part of that, or will that money come from a different location?
Well, the 900,000 would be used to meet whatever unmet needs there are. So let's say if you have someone that, through whatever assistance, do not have enough funds to completely rebuild, our funding could be used for that purpose to help meet whatever gaps they may have in rebuilding. That's how we envision that to work.
So you're saying that, of course, I know they don't have the money to rebuild. They probably on zero at this point, so they lost everything. What does those people, what can they do? What would they have to do to establish themselves in another home?
Mr. Manager.
One of the things that I'm hopeful that our friends from the state and FEMA can talk about as well is the kind of full range of benefits that FEMA brings. I don't have it with me, but I do recall earlier in the week looking at one of their web pages, and they, in addition to providing direct assistance for transitional housing, they may also be able to assist with replacement of some daily or necessities. I'm not sure yet exactly how extensive that list will be. They'll be prepared. But traditionally, the programs that Victor is talking about are for folks who still meet your eligibility guidelines.
Correct.
And the goal, as he mentioned a moment ago, would be for us to work with our partner agencies, that being everybody from a Red Cross and the Salvation Army, who have furniture available, Habitat for Humanity, the Restore, and then us to be able to also assist and fill in any of those needed gaps. But right now, some of the issues about which houses are rebuildable or can be renovated, what is the damage assessment for each one of those houses? Do they exceed a certain percentage of the value of the homes? Some of that information, I think FEMA will actually be collecting as well when they start their full disaster assessment. Your city staff, which are here in the burgundy shirts at the back, along with folks in zoning and code enforcement, did a kind of staff-initiated review of all of the damage across the city at some of the structures. But the full disaster and damage assessment will be done later by FEMA, and I think there's actually a huge meeting tomorrow with local folks and FEMA to do a pre-damage assessment meeting. But some of the questions that we're asking of Victor, he may not, I don't think that he has information on those as it relates to which ones are rebuildable or not. But my goal would be, if council is so inclined, this is the second update, the second week. We have a meeting with you on October 24th. We are capturing these questions as we're going along that we don't have answers for. And if not on the 24th, we'll definitely will have hopefully some additional information about specifically that topic that you referenced by November 7th. One of the questions that came out from several council members relates to how do we go about updating our flood and floodplain zoning maps and where places can be rebuilt. As you know, some of the structures on Murchison Road were flooded literally twice in a 2-week period of time. And so I'm not sure what FEMA's protocols are for an SBA for assisting businesses, which have been flooded back to back and historically have flooded as well. But if there's an opportunity for us to use Victor's funds, or definitely the money that he talked about that Congress would hopefully appropriate through HUD for disaster response later, that would be allocated based upon the needs identified in our community. From what Victor shared with me and I shared with the council last week, I believe some of that could be used to assist us in mitigation and hazard prevention in the future. But we're exploring all of those options in every pot of money. But right now, I don't think that Victor, and again, he's here, so you can ask him directly, but I don't think that he has all the information related to that. And that's based on what he and I discussed earlier today, too.
Okay. Can you clarify the 75 federal and the 25 state? Because a lot of people don't understand. They think that that's going to cover 100% of their disaster. But can you clarify what that means to the residents?
Yes, sir, I will try, and I'll also note that folks from FEMA are here as well and can cover that. But for our purposes, when we're talking about the 75-25, 75 is what we'd be seeking in reimbursements from FEMA for eligible city government activities. And so some of our response, the labor cost, some of our debris removal, and other traditionally eligible expenses for which we would be able to get FEMA reimbursements. And that full list, again, folks from FEMA are here, and I don't know if Cheryl is here, our Chief Financial Officer as well, and should be happy to expound on that in greater detail. Our hope, though, is that the General Assembly will come back in session and will also assist Fayetteville and other devastated communities with covering a portion of that 25 as well. Some of the disaster and debris removal, I think within, Jerry's at 30 or 60 days, we talked about 85%, we think. First 30 days, we believe some of the debris removal. So some of the dates slide, but essentially it is reimbursement for money and activities that we do as a city government in response to the disaster. And we have to be very, very careful about how we track that. And making sure that if there are any procurement issues, that unless it's an absolute emergency, Rob Stone covered some of that as well, about you could speed up one procurement for, let's say, on Sipple Avenue, because that was the only entrance into Rayconda, but for others, such as on Greenock and Aaron Lakes, where they have other ways in and out, that some of our emergency procurement doesn't work. But if we get to the end, staff will also be issuing an RFP for hopefully a consultant to assist us in making sure that we are maximizing our eligible expenses for reimbursement, and that we're covering all of our dotting all the I's and crossing all the T's. But as time at the end of the meeting comes up, I'll be happy to address that in greater detail. But specifically, I think the folks from FEMA will be able to cover some of that as well in their presentation.
Thank you.
Mr. Crisp. Oh, I'm sorry. Mr. Deviere, then Mr. Crisp.
Want to go first?
Go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you, Victor. Look forward to that breakdown of that $900,000 and what that looks like. A couple quick questions. Our CHOTO partners that have been partner in the affordable housing, the connection point to them, because we've got an investment in those based on the partnership that we have to build a lot of these programs. Is that where you're thinking the $900,000 is part of that would be reallocated to our partners to work with them? Or what are we doing with our partners that we've had with the block grant program as well as home funds?
All right. My recommendation would be on a first come, first served basis as funds are available, because they are all individuals as far as the single family housing that may have damage. So I would recommend that it be done on a first come, first served basis as funds are available. The CHOTOs, that's one item. The other one is with the private developers that have affordable housing units, and they have pretty much taken care of their damage. Should be back in by the end of this week, hopefully, or very soon. But with the Chodos, the homeowners will have available, they will be able to apply for those funds just like anyone else throughout the city that may be eligible, based on eligibility.
I just want to make sure we're tied in with our partners. I know you've been
And
talking.
we are talking with them on a regular basis.
It's an important partnership we've had for years for affordable housing in our community. And the last thing, I understand the disaster recovery funds first have to be appropriated by Congress, but there's a application process, a business plan that all goes through this.
Right.
Are we going ahead and leaning forward and anticipating that Congress is going to do this?
There
So we
is-
can kind of be first mover advantage?
Well, there is some time that will take place to where we will be able to have a better assessment of what the unmet needs are. They are very critical in terms of us coming up with a plan to determine unmet needs. I don't think we're at a point to be able to make that type of determination based on what their requirements are. As far as using the local dollars we have, we hope that we can come up with something very general that could cover anyone that may have loss in their home, as opposed to the type of plan that would be required under the other funding.
And I know you haven't flushed out all the details of that $900,000 plan, but are you talking grants, loans?
We're not talking anything yet until we
All right,
hear from
that's good.
council.
Okay.
And to
Just
move
wanted to
forward.
see
But we will
what
move
staff
forward
was
quickly
thinking.
once we hear from council.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Mr. DeVere. Mr. Crisp?
Mr. Sharp or City Manager, there are two things in your slide that are of concern to all of us. And the first is you said that approximately $900,000 could be reprogrammed to meet unmet needs. Needs are dire. Needs connote a sense of urgency. So am I to think, Mr. City Manager, that you're going to ask us to reprogram these funds on the 24th of October at the latest? And the second question is, further down, you say, Victor, that substantial amendment is required to change the action plan. Are we going to change the action plan on the 24th of October to begin this process of handling these dire needs? Those are my two questions.
Mr. Chris, the timeframe that we have, we wouldn't be able to do it on the 24th because of the plan has to be prepared. Then we have to make it available for public comment for 10 days. Then we'll bring it on an agenda after that to council for approval. So you're looking a little further than that October 24th date.
The action plan, but what about the $900,000 to give us liquid assets to start some things going?
And that is what we're looking for tonight. If council has an interest in us moving forward with a plan, we would move forward with the substantial amendment process, bring that back to you for a meeting to adopt that, but update you in between.
We can't do the 900,000 either without the public hearing?
No, sir.
Both of
It would require.
Both of these will require public hearing.
Right, so the 900,000 is what we're asking to do the substantial amendment for.
But what are we, is this an amendment to our budget, City Manager? And if so?
No, sir, it would be to your annual action plan. Some of the things that Victor was trying to say was, many of the funds that Victor has in his department already are able to be used by residents who are eligible for those programs. And so you'll recall that as part of the annual action plan, we had money set aside for emergency repairs. And that was through, I think, Fayetteville Urban Ministries. And so there are opportunities for us to potentially shore up additional resources for Fayetteville Urban Ministries for that purpose. There may be additional monies that council had allocated, as you may remember, I think it was $353,000 to go to B Street, Lincoln Drive, and Bonnie Doon. One of and that is part of the 900,000 as well. Those are the monies which are out there. So one of the things that when we talk about we've identified money that we feel could be reprogrammed it may be council's choice to say, okay, we still believe that we want to allocate money specifically for those 3 areas, but you may choose to say, we only wish to allocate $200,000 and then free up $153,000 to be repurposed or reallocated to, let's say, emergency repairs. Those are the types of things that we would be trying to shift around, but a lot of that will be based as well on what we will be able to identify as the unmet needs with council's concurrence. And some of that we won't know yet fully until we get some additional information from FEMA and their disaster assistance.
Okay, I won't belabor it, but my concern here is if those funds are not obligated, I'm just not sure why we gotta have a public hearing on funds that are not obligated yet.
And Mr. Chris, that is because when council adopted our annual action plan that we sent to HUD, we said specifically we would use it for certain purposes. So when we changed that, we did for an activity. So basically, it is about the fact that we would be changing the activity that we have said to HUD that we would use it for.
I was just looking for a fast action track here, and just.
And we'll go as fast as we can.
Not quite as fast as I wanted to be. Thank you.
Yes, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Crisp, and thank you, Mr. Sharp. I see no further questions, no other lights.
Yes, sir.
And council, next up is Mr. Scott Bullard from our emergency management.
Good evening, Mayor, Mayor Pro Tem, Council, citizens and friends of Fayetteville. It's been a week. I'll bring you a lot of optimism. We see a lot of good things happening. We see positive direction. We see results. We're a long ways from where we want to be, but I was out in the street today and things look promising. I'm going to kind of wrap up a lot of loose ends, and I will do my best to weave together maybe answers to questions that you might have outside of my predecessors. But also I want to recognize the 2 gentlemen from the state and the federal government coming behind me because they might have answers to some things you're thinking. First and foremost, I want to reiterate again, we have some code enforcement officers in the House tonight that made it possible to do the windshield survey sorts of things that starts to grease the skids for that damage assessment process, which was alluded to. There'll be a meeting tomorrow at the county's call with some of the FEMA representatives just to simply start the engine and get things moving in that direction. I'm going to endeavor first to present you what our debris team has been working on. On that team is primarily at the core environmental services, but we have Parks and Rec involved, we have my shop involved, we have some standby contractors that we had under contract that are pre-event involved, and I've probably left some people out. Even the county's involved because they control the landfills. The graphic I threw up is our message, and that message is we need the public's help with sorting because we should be up and fully running tomorrow with our contractor. Now, previous to that, yesterday, we had 5 loads of debris pulled by city staff from Campbell Avenue, Old Wilmington neighborhood, and they spent a bit of time today with Stonebridge and Sessoms and still tracing back to that general area where they pulled about 6 loads. This is kind of our capacity as a city, and the reason for the contractors, when they get on station and start pulling tomorrow, it'll be continuous. They'll have bigger trucks with trailers. And one thing that we will offer you, after our 8 a.m. touch base, which we will have every day, we will push out to you the amount collected the previous day, relatively where it came from. And I don't want to promise a product that I'm not designing, but GIS will eventually plot where this is coming from. And with your indulgence of patience, the dots on the map will catch up in kind of a heat map, hotspot, if you will. And I'm sure the citizens out there will enjoy seeing actually the progress of that. Our media campaign is being pushed out. The papers have run it for us and some of our other media partners. A lot of it's been textual, so we want to get these graphics out, which they've already appeared in some of our media. Because our fear on the debris side is if people mix stuff, it makes it hard for us to pick up, and the contractor may not be able to separate all of it. One thing to note, we will also have a vegetative site at 1624 Cliffdale Road. I'm sorry, Riley. It's near Riley and Cliffdale. That is a farm field that the county contracted that will be turned into a temporary disposal site. And that will be up and running as well. But that will only be vegetative debris, and it'll be ground in a tub-type grinder.
Give that address again.
1624 Riley Road. Right now, it's
that
kind
the
of
same-
without a mailbox or anything. It's a
Is that the
farm
same
field
site
with a
you did
gate.
The tornado debris when you did that?
I
Back in
don't-
the tornadoes?
Help me, Jerry, but I don't believe that one was used with the tornadoes. That was all Ben Martin. This was a site the county's had kind of a, I guess, their form of a contract with for a very long time and just never needed to activate it. Everything else will find its place as it's intended as far as construction debris, household haz waste, white goods will go to the appropriate places either at Ann Street or Wilkes Road with our landfills. And all of that, as I said, will be rolled up into a report because we'll be tracking reimbursement via the FEMA funding for this work that the contractor's helping us do. So you may drive by neighborhoods and you may have people calling in saying, hey, why haven't these guys got our stuff picked up? It's coming around, and we're actually using some information as far as route tracking that was already in place with our normal solid waste collection to optimize and build some efficiency in for this contractor. Because we literally have people coming in the city here who have no clue about our neighborhoods or anything. And since we've got something that's great and it's in place, we're going to make it happen based on how we know to do business best. They're just going to do some heavy lifting for us. Another item on my little punch list of things here, let me just speak briefly about partnerships and unmet needs. I'll give you an example of one project that I got involved with around lunchtime where we're trying to take efficiency and build it into disaster relief. And that example is the Baptist men that were doing feeding up at Cedar Falls Church above Shawcroft King's Grant were running low on water. Well, after the conversation started, several of us knew that when the hospital had its crisis with the water system, there was water dumped in a parking lot. So, bang, phone calls are made, and then water is being moved from Cape Fear Valley up to the Baptist men kitchen so that nothing's wasted. Their bottles are just not left in a parking lot somewhere going to waste. As cheap as that is, $4 for a case of water, it means everything when you're able to plug that sort of stuff in. We meet daily with county partners. As you would imagine right now, mass care, mass feeding, and human services are top priority. Not only dealing with sheltered folks, but people that are calling in with unmet needs that we have the ability to reach out at the moment. And when I say we, I'm up here speaking for Red Cross. All of the faith-based community volunteers are involved. It's one collective network. And that network will continue to build. And some of you have seen, we'll look at this next slide, there was a pamphlet put out. It was a yellow pamphlet put out by the county that had community resource guide. We've grown far beyond a pamphlet now. And I also put the website down there that some of my state and FEMA cohorts behind me can attest to. We're seeing a lot of activity where people have registered, and they've already been encountered at least once with FEMA in the field, trying to figure out what these needs are and start that process rolling. I can't guarantee you where the disaster recovery center is going to be, and they can probably speak to that, but we're looking at the possible location being the social services complex off of Ramsey, where a citizen might come in. If they haven't registered, there'll be computers provided and people to help them do that if there are challenges. And also by unlocking that social system, when they walk in, here's all the other services lined up. That takes care of disaster food stamps, whatever the needs might be. And we will add to that network as it grows. There's no reason why we can't put housing issues in there. If they need to register to vote, if they need help getting their mail. And we've also worked with the Postal Service with some of these neighborhoods. If nothing else, looking at a general delivery context where you may have to go to your local post office and receive your mail in a batch, but we don't want these essential day-to-day things to falter, and we correct those needs as they come along. We've done some creative solutions to areas that we have cut off. Let me speak just quickly about Rayconda. There has been trash collection dumpsters set up since our trash trucks may not be able to get across the dam. We have concerns about heavy fire trucks getting across there, so we have some smaller trucks that we can supplement until we can do something a little better in terms of the weight. The police department has a bike patrol set of resources that can accompany their cars, so officers can patrol regardless, whether it's on foot, bicycle, or cruiser. These things have been put in place so that all of this happens. And I'm sure I'm leaving somebody out, but we're trying to catch each service as it comes along and provide that. And I'll be subject to your questions pending also introducing the gentleman behind me.
Okay, first one is Councilmember Art.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and thank you, Scott. Good brief. Can you go back to the previous slide, the one that you had? Yeah, I just want to say that was a great and a very informative slide. I don't know who did that on the city staff, but I want to commend them. When you made that available, several of us got that on Twitter, and we got it out on Facebook. And the citizens really, that's what I'm talking about from a communication standpoint. That's quick and easy. They can understand it. The only thing that I would add would be a phone number. If there's a need for a phone number, you've got the website. But as much as we can, if we can put it in bite-sized pieces like this, informative information that we can get out, we can make the widest dissemination. And then the other thing, I just want to ask, I appreciate all the things we're trying to do for Rayconda and that unique situation. How about the Postal Service? Are they able to get their post?
We've spoken to the postal inspectors. They're out of Charlotte, but they cover this region. I've not heard back the definitive word on them. All I have heard is that they can treat it for the moment in a general delivery sense, so that if your box is not being delivered, you can go to whichever satellite center serves you, whether it's Downing Street or one of the other outlets with the post office, and pick up your mail in a batch.
Yeah, I'm just going to ask the question. There are places throughout the city that postal carriers walk, and you know, and during special times and special needs, you make special arrangements, and I think that's something. If there's any way we can influence that, or if there's anybody that we need to call on the legislative side or on the congressional side, I think we need to do that. People have bills to pay. They have. They might be getting checks that are coming in the mail or medications. That would be the thing I'd be concerned about. A lot of people get their prescription meds by the mail. So we need to make sure that we're getting whatever we need to do to help get the mail service through there.
We'll be happy to reach out to them again.
Thank you, Scott.
Mr. Devier.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thanks, Scott, for the update and all the work along the way. On the debris cleanup, is there, I know you're going to hotspot it and do all these great things, but are we prioritizing certain areas based on where the massive floods were, or how are we beginning to deploy those assets?
The answer is kind of all of the above. We had a pre-existing, and Jerry, jump in if I say something out of step. We had kind of a pre-existing plan that's normal pickup, and there are efficiencies built in those routes as the best distance from A to B.
Right.
The contractor has been given that information, and then also areas of concern that we know vis-a-vis our own heat maps.
Right.
Where we know damage occurred, and that even feeds back from what some of the code enforcement officers fed us data-wise. What we're going to rely on, though, is the things that we don't know will have to come in via the call center, via Fay-Fix-It, sometimes just even a telephone call through the normal channels to those offices. The other side of that, and I wouldn't be qualifying it without saying it, we're not sure that everybody has come home yet, or everybody started their project yet, whether it's their home, their business, or what have you.
Okay, thank you. And then also this came out a couple days into it. People were already starting the diagram that you sent out. How much of a stickler is it going to be if stuff isn't sorted? I know people are trying to go back now and begin to sort things, but are we going to run into an issue if, some things just aren't going to get sorted?
Yeah. And the contractor is aware of that, and there are measures that can be taken. For instance, let me just pick on white goods. If a refrigerator's sitting out there, ideally, we want the food and that sort of stuff cleaned out of it. If it's not, then that'll have to be done at the repository at the landfill for it. Household has waste, I don't need to say anything about that because they don't want a surprise like that at the landfill. Now, vegetation getting mixed with construction debris, that invariably happens sometimes. And what will happen is that will default and all become construction demolition debris. We don't want that to happen any more than it has to because we can grind the vegetation and use it for landscaping, bark, or fuel for boilers or some other purpose to an
They're going to
end.
be as flexible as they can within reason.
Within reason. And we also, and again, this is partnerships, we engaged the landfill and the county engineering side early on because they do run the landfill and we needed their buy-in and their support with our operation.
And thanks. And just, Jerry, just thank you for going ahead and pushing some of those city assets out, beginning that process is key for our citizens. So thank you. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem Colvin.
Mr. Bullitt, just like to say great job that you all are doing, you and solid waste. Question for you, I heard you say on the tipping fees, and I think that's included in our daily briefing about the tonnage. Has the county waived the fees, or is that a reimbursable expense from a FEMA side, or is that to come in the presentation?
We were first led to believe there would be no waiving of the fees, but Jerry, I'm correct in understanding they will waive for the citizen to carry stuff down there, but not for our trucks. There'll be a window. But
No specifics on that, so we can get that out to the citizens?
Well, I don't know the time deadline on what that window is going to be, but we're racing that 30-day mark to do as much as we can because with the sliding scale, we could stand to get an 85% reimbursement. So that's why we're pushing the contractor like mad. And we know we're going to have to do several passes. That's been the tradition, and that's the way it will invariably work out.
Mr. Hurst.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and Councilmember Devier pretty much asked all the questions I was going to ask. But thank you, Mr. Bullard, and to Mr. Dietzen. Thank you very much. I really appreciate it. So, citizens, kind of what is the time frame with the contractors starting tomorrow? 3 weeks if they haven't come to a certain neighborhood.
Our goal is less than a month, so three to 4 weeks,
All right.
because we want to chase that 85%
Citizens may be calling council members saying it's still out there. When's the debris going to be picked up? And this graphic that Councilmember Arp had recognized or applauded is excellent, because today at Habitat for Humanity, where homeowners were throwing out everything by the street off of Buxton and that area, we were separating it all to make it easier, and there's tons of stuff still down there. So thank you, Mr. Bullard, and thank you, Mr. Dietzen. Great plan.
Thank you, sir.
Mr. Crisp.
Mr. Bullitt, Mr. Dietzen, the dumpsters over there at Raconda, what's the frequency? Because the other day, there were bags all outside of the dumpsters and everything. Are we trying to empty those daily, or how often? Because they need, I guess what I'm asking you, that's right. What I'm asking you to do is take a look at that, because you may need to service those dumpsters daily to keep varmints and everything else. Because when I was there the day before yesterday, there was trash all around the dumpsters because they were full, okay? Just take a look at that, please.
Yes, sir, we will, and they've admitted they'll empty it as often as it needs to be. So we'll get a hold of them first thing in the morning. Yes, sir.
Councilmember Wright.
Yes, thanks, Scott, for all the information. My question is, can you clarify a little bit more about 1624 Raleigh, about the actual location, and help the people that are listening? And I'm thinking about the citizens, and when you're talking about debris, is the size of the debris important? Because you got a lot of people going to clean up their own yards, and they're going to be trying to find out where to take it. And how's that going to work?
We don't want the citizens to use 1624
Okay,
Raleigh.
good.
That will be for our contractor to take. Size doesn't matter. I mean,
Okay.
as big a tree as they can put in the back of their trucks and grind it and reduce it.
Okay, so
that location.
contractor's going to work that location?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
We hope this will be as virtually seamless as we can make it, because with the usual roll-off carts out there, they can put pine needles and leaves and those sorts of things
Okay.
as it fits. And then for the big stuff, if they can just drag it to the curb,
Okay.
we'll get it
They
taken
don't have
care
to
of.
cut anything, just get it to the curb.
Yes, sir.
Okay.
That's the plan.
Thank you, Mr. Wright. Ms. Jensen?
Yes, I was wondering, and this is for the city manager, can we get a contractor picking up debris to focus on Delaware Drive and Old Wilmington Road? Where a lot of the houses are flooded?
Were those done today?
Yes, sir.
But are they done?
No, ma'am, they are not done.
Okay.
We are concentrating in those two areas with the city's resources at this point, and the contractor is also going to be concentrating in those areas when they start tomorrow.
Okay, okay,
We are not finished, no.
okay. That was more my question, but thank you. I do have one more question, and it might have been said, but I want to say it again. So, and it's going to come up. Let's say that somebody didn't get a lot of flooding in their home, and they see this out, and they have old TVs, and are they to put their appliances out, yes or no?
Ideally, we would prefer they didn't, but
Okay.
in a perfect world, we're not going to be able to distinguish between impacted versus not impacted.
Okay. But ideally and preferably, you would rather them not.
We'd rather them not.
Okay.
What it'll all boil down to is most of the neighbors know the hot spots. I mean, if it's on Old Wilmington Road, it wouldn't be unusual to find it out there. But if it's in a neighborhood that never floods, maybe there'll be some peer pressure among neighbors to.
And that was my question. If somebody sees this out and says, well, I put everything out there and it wasn't in the flood zone, they didn't get, that was my question. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Jensen. Mr. Bullard, that is it. Certainly appreciate you and everything you've done for the past 10 days. And your work in the EOC as well is to be commended. Thank you.
We've got a great team, sir.
Thank you, sir.
It's my pleasure then to introduce Mr. Joe Stanton from North Carolina Emergency Management that's behind me, and then his colleague from FEMA, Mr. Joe Giroux.
Mayor, Councilman, it's my pleasure to be here tonight. I'm sorry it's under these circumstances to be in this great city. I'm here basically, and what I'm going to do is discuss public assistance with you and try to answer any questions regarding the public assistance program under the FEMA and also the state that we have running. Also, my colleague Joe is going to cover the individual assistance program, and so we figured that was the best way to cover our resources. As you know, this was an expedited major declaration, which means that at the beginning it was a little bit different than our normal type of federal declaration. Because what happened was that the damages were so severe and so obvious that FEMA, after we requested immediately, approved categories A and B, which is categories A and B are debris and also emergency protective measures to be reimbursed for this disaster. Now, under public assistance, those are the emergency protective measures or debris. And the only reason that debris is removed in a disaster is not because it's debris, because it is an emergency protective measure and endangers the public at large. The second part of it is category C through G, which covers your roads and bridges, as we saw, parks and recreation, and other permanent work that certainly has been damaged. We know that y'all are gathering that documentation. We have already put in a request to FEMA to do these damage assessments for Cumberland County, in Fayetteville to cover the categories C through G, and we will be scheduling those. And it will be, I think, a pretty easy process, because actually what will happen is that we don't have to go to the president to add on these additional categories. What we have to do is just be able to show that there's damages for this, because you've already been declared under public assistance. But we have to be able to show that there's damages to these categories, and then we will seek the federal coordinating officer's guidance to approve these categories. And usually that's a very expedited manner too. And so in that way, we're pleased with that. At that time, once we get all categories of work approved, we will hold what is called an applicant briefing. We ask all applicants to come together, and we will go over the total public assistance programs, any changes to the public assistance programs. You know, y'all were last affected by, I guess, Hurricane Irene and the tornadoes of 2011. And so y'all kind of know the drill, and this is not your first time. However, before we get to that point, we do want to ensure, and what I saw tonight was a very positive statement, was that y'all are already collecting and documenting correctly. We just want to ensure that you're documenting, you know, under the different categories, that you're documenting all force account labor, force account equipment, all materials, contracts, and I'm sure that you are, because y'all have a very good understanding of this program. But the main reason I'm standing here is to try to begin to answer your questions. And if I cannot answer your questions, I will take them back and then relay them back to your city manager, and so that we can have an understanding. But I don't want to tell you anything wrong tonight either. So with that, I'll open it up to questions.
First question is Mayor Pro Tem Colvin.
Mr. Mayor's cracking jokes. And how you doing, sir? I appreciate you joining us. On the public assistance side, now this speaks to the 75%, or in one case I heard 85% reimbursement. Can you hit that a little bit? And also, if you have any inclination, I know it's hard to predict what the General Assembly may do or the governor, but if you've heard of any requests being submitted for the other 25% or 20%.
In all conversations that I've had, historically speaking, we have already, to a certain degree, and I can't speak for the governor, but it's my understanding, and historically, let's just look at historically. Historically, in the state of North Carolina has continuously always picked up the non-federal share, which is the 25%. Okay? Now, what I have asked directly, and I'm having a meeting with the office, we'll see some people from the Office of State Budget tomorrow morning, and I will make sure that I can get this in writing for you, okay? So hopefully, as in previous disasters or in previous events, the non-federal share will be picked up. Now, let's deal with the 85% dealing with debris removal. If we're picking up the non-federal share, we very much would like for you to pick it up expeditiously so that we can cut down that non-federal share to 15%. And so that's a win-win for everybody. And so we would like that very much. Okay? Next question.
Councilmember Arp.
Yeah. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. And Councilmember Colvin, I've read something today that both the Senate and the House of the General Assembly, their appropriations chairmen have already been meeting, and they're drafting legislation. And I know you're probably working with the state, and the good news is the state has a bigger rainy day fund than it's ever had. $1.57 billion is the amount, and it's in the reserves, and then they have substantial other monies that the governor has in his ability to reach out and touch. But the question that I have is, as we go through this process, there are people that have lived in areas that weren't necessarily in flood zones, and those areas did not require flood insurance, and yet they were impacted by floods. And so the question that I have is does FEMA offer assistance for that? I was in a house, it just happened to be down in Hope Mills this weekend, and they were in an area that they didn't have flood insurance. but they had substantial water in the house. And the question I got asked is, will FEMA help them in any way to recover this loss that they experienced?
I think there's an opportunity for that. I can't speak for the flood management program per se and some of the individual assistance. That's more of an individual assistance than a public assistance question. However, I do believe that every situation is unique, and we will explore and do our very best to assist these individuals. It's always tough when you are not in a floodplain and you do the right thing and you're flooded, and so I think that'll be looked upon. What we do encourage everybody to do, though, at this time is to register with FEMA. That is the first step. Now, I can tell you that if they do not register for FEMA, then the chances of getting assistance are very slim. So, and then the next step is after they register for FEMA, it's critical that they also register for SBA assistance. And then if they're turned down for SBA, an SBA loan for individuals, then FEMA will open the door for some additional assistance that could cover some other needs assistance, which may cover some personal property loss, okay? But those are the two things that begins with, and then we can go from there. And every case is considered, upon its own merit.
Right, so just so I make sure I captured what you said, everybody who's impacted should apply with FEMA, and that information is on the city's website.
Yes, I saw it even outside, and I appreciate that. That's
Right.
great.
And then if FEMA can't support their claim, then they should go to the SBA?
First, you're going to have to, what we want to see is also register for SBA also, and be, when you have your disaster recovery center open, SBA will be a partner in that disaster recovery center. In fact, right now you have, I think, a business center here, and individuals are able to go into that business center at SBA and register for SBA at that center, and they can do that now before the disaster recovery center opens.
So we're recommending they go ahead and do both.
I think it's vital. I think it's important, and it will expedite the recovery of the individual.
Okay, thank you very much,
Thank
sir.
you.
Councilmember Wright.
Thank you, sir, for being here, helping us through this process of recovery. I have several questions for you. First question would be, is there a cap for individuals that individuals can get from FEMA, and what is that cap?
Yeah, now, again, that's individual assistance, and I'm going to speak on public assistance.
Okay.
I'll let Joe handle that.
Okay. Well, let me ask you this one.
It's around $33,000, by the way.
Well, I heard 35.
Okay.
Okay.
Right.
Okay. How does FEMA operate when assigned areas of operation? And the reason I asked that question, had people call me and say a FEMA representative would come out and they would have a row of houses or whatever, the business, and they asked them and says, well, can you handle my property while you're out here? I signed. They said, no, that's not my area of operation. So can you explain to the people, how does FEMA operate when they have areas of operation assigned to them, so people wouldn't think that FEMA is not trying to help them? But
yeah, and I appreciate that. And what individuals need to know is that once you register for FEMA, that is assigned to a FEMA contractor, housing contractor, if you have damages, and they're going to go out to those assigned areas that they're assigned to. Somebody else, we have, I think, 400 to 600 FEMA inspectors out across this state right now. And so every time somebody registers, they get assigned, it goes into their queue, and that's where they go. Mm-hmm. Because, they don't know really if the next door neighbor has applied for FEMA or not. And so
right.
that's the reason for that.
Okay. Well, thank you. The next question would be, when FEMA talks to a client and they ask them to get a contractor, do FEMA encourage individuals to get a contractor to assist with the damage, as far as the damage of the property, or how does that work? Because, some of these contractors that that are out there that say they're contractors, a lot of people are getting ripped off and things like that. What would you encourage the people to do as far as contractors, acquiring contractors?
Always, what would you do normally would be probably to get 2 or 3 quotes.
Right.
To make sure that, your contractor has a good record in your community. And some communities have where if a contracting company is coming in from outside, they have to go to the town hall or somebody and register, to be eligible to do business in that community. There's all sorts of things that can be done. We want the individuals that have suffered losses to be able to rebuild as fast as possible, of course. But we want them to do it in a smart way and not get in trouble by having a contractor that's there to take advantage of them. And so, like I said, basically just, follow what they would normally,
Get
do.
about 2 or 3 quotes and make sure those contractors are legitimate, that won't get ripped off. My final question would be, talk to some people, and everybody is not website or computer literate per se, and some say it's hard to navigate on the FEMA website. Now, I called in and registered a building for roof damage. It took about 20 minutes to go through all the questions and got that done. So I haven't gone on the website. What would you say to people that maybe having some difficulties with the website and how else?
Well, certainly, that's when we open up the Disaster Recovery Center here. I think that's an opportunity for those individuals to go into it. Also, like you said, call and work through that. There also will be individuals out later on. I think most of them have been in the shelter situations right now in their Disaster Survivor Assistance Program with FEMA, and they will help the individual recover too. And they're going to actually stay in these communities that have been impacted to actually help walk through this registration process.
So the FEMA representative will help individuals that are not computer literate or whatever to walk them through the process. Okay, thank you.
And one other thing, if you find out, sir, that there is a need, let us know, okay? Sure. It takes good communications both. Our job is to find out what the unmet needs are and try to resolve those unmet needs. Okay?
Well, my counterpart asked a question, which was a good comment about smaller churches. That they're considered businesses and they should apply with the small business on FSU, or they apply online as well or call in as far as a business is concerned.
I don't actually know what the status is, but we can certainly go through the small business and see. Okay.
Thank you. Mr. Hurst?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. And I want to say thanks to the city of Fayetteville and also the council members, because several of us talked about how, and as you had alluded, communication is critical, and getting that disasterassistance.gov out. Property owner in the area that Councilmember Arpit spoke of near Hope Mills had filed. A FEMA representative came out, so kudos for getting out so promptly. Assessed the damage, did not have flood insurance. The area was flooded, the neighborhood up to the first floor, so all the duct work had to be removed. Approximate $10,000 to $15,000 worth of damage, but FEMA said we can't help you. So I guess the next step would be, as you had mentioned, Councilmember Arp, file with SBA, or is there another opportunity that another FEMA inspector would come out and say, perhaps, because, and the reason was your property really wasn't flooded. So we know it wasn't like some of the areas 4 or 5 feet, or some homes completely covered. So this is kind of a gray area, and financially they're kind of in straits. So what do you recommend?
Well, they're going to get a letter from FEMA basically stating why they were denied. And in that letter, it would also cover the appeal process that they're able to go through and what steps they can have, how to follow the appeal process and what will happen in that appeal process. If they feel that they were wronged in that, please, we encourage them to appeal. And also, we mentioned the SBA. Our job is basically to try to find those unmet needs, and that this may be one of those cases.
Thank you, Mr. Hirsch. Thank you very much, sir. That's all the questions we've got.
Thank you.
Appreciate you.
Good afternoon, Mr. Mayor, council members, and the citizens. It is a pleasure to be here and to be able to answer your questions, and our prayers and thoughts go to the citizens that were affected by this storm. FEMA's presence started about 2 weeks ago. FEMA is part of the team. We are here working side by side with our state partners, local, county, city officials, in order to bring us as a team so that we can rebuild and support those survivors that have been affected by this event. The key thing, as it's been mentioned, is for the citizens to register with FEMA, 1-800. The 1-800-621-3362. That is the key. That is the first step. In that call, the survivor will get a case number. With that case number, the individual will be able to trace and track the progress of his or her case. At the same time, the operator will schedule that person for an inspection, and the individual should be able to get a call or a message within 3 to 5 days. Upon inspection of the home, I know it's been brought up about the maximum and so on. The intent of the federal government in assisting those survivors is to make the house safe, sanitary, and secure. Is not to bring the structure back to its original state or hold. That is the key. The average amount of money or funds that is provided, or the grant, it's a federal grant. The amount of the grant that's provided, the average is from $3,000 to $6,000. Now, the key thing that has been mentioned about the Small Business Administration and the importance of filling out that loan application is to determine those individuals that do not qualify to make payments that can be put on another queue and provided other needs assistance. And in the other needs assistance, I'll just go down the list here. Provides assistance for medical, dental, funeral, child care, miscellaneous items, personal property, like has been mentioned, transportation, moving, and storage. Again, the key thing is for the individual to call the 1-800 number, or there's a number of ways of registering. They can go to the www.disasterassistance.gov on the web page. You can also download FEMA mobile through the app, and also by visiting the Disaster Recovery Center. As a matter of fact, there is a proposed site here in Fayetteville at the Department of Social Services, located at 1225 Ramsey Street. The inspection for that facility will be conducted tomorrow, and what we'll try to do is, in conjunction with the local officials, is do what we call a soft opening. That there's a number of partners that we bring. There's a number of people that we bring to the table there. We'll have the FEMA, we'll have state, county officials there, we'll have SBA, and in some cases we have the Red Cross, Salvation Army, and other partners and state partners that'll be there to facilitate and be a one-stop shop for the citizens here, so that all the answers can be met. Naturally, it's a place that the individual can take their case number, and they'll be able to give them a status as to the status of their case. Again, we've been here for 2 weeks, and we have other numerous partners that are still with us, as the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers. We have HUD coming with us too. We have EPA that has been involved with us. We have Health and Human Services that have also been partnering and monitoring other activities. As a matter of fact, here at Fort Bragg, we have what's called incident support base. We have hundreds of trucks with resources, water, meals, and so on, that it's been the hub of distribution for the state. So as we continue to work together, we're working with the state in reference to housing needs. So we're joining forces with the state with a housing task force. As this citizen registered, they're going to be asked a series of questions on exactly what is their current state, what are their needs. Our first priority is to place the survivors in a rental facility close to the where the person lives. That's the preferred method, somewhere close, so that the citizen remains in the city or in the county that he lives. In some cases, it's very hard because of the limited resources in the zone. We also have the Transitional Sheltering Assistance Program. That is a program provided by FEMA with a cost share with the state. It's a short-term housing program that we involve numerous hotels and motels. Very easy for the hotels to register and participate in this program. The survivor is assigned to a hotel, the closest one possible. The survivor does not pay anything or receive any funds. He just gets the calls in, and he'll be furnished the address of what's available, if something is available within the zone of the affected area. So it's a short-term, 2-week. There are certain qualifications to meet, and if that individual does meet those qualifications, they'll be provided with that short-term assistance until they can get back to their homes. But again, it was mentioned about appeal. In some cases, survivors will receive a FEMA letter, and in most cases, it will be upsetting. It could be that they say that it was denied or missing some information. In a lot of cases, what FEMA's waiting for is some documentation, some proof of residency, that they live in the house, and insurance. There cannot be duplication of payments. So whatever the insurance pays, then FEMA deducts and comes to a total. So to avoid that, the key thing is, if there's an individual that has an issue and has not been resolved, then please bring it up with the county emergency manager. They'll contact the state, and we'll personally get involved in that case management. My job is to ensure that my folks are out there answering the questions. In the shelters, what we're doing is we're providing what we call these individuals disaster survivor assistance, and they usually canvass the affected subdivisions. Here in this case, what we're doing is we're touching everybody in priority of the shelters. We want to assist in the process with you and the state to get those folks from the shelter to another temporary facility until we can bring them back to their homes. And in there, we're touching them, we're talking with them. What are your needs? What are your specific needs? Is it that you don't have access, no place to go? As in one case, we were at one of the shelters, one of the individuals didn't have money for gas. So what we did was we put them in touch with the Red Cross, and they were able to assist. So it's all about communication and being able to bring, and this state has an excellent volunteer organization. It's outstanding. That's why FEMA is not the only one. That's why I'm saying we're part of the team. So as part of the team, we have to use all available resources, and the volunteers, the faith-based organizations, as mentioned, it's outstanding. So we join forces. We know that FEMA cannot make a person whole in the damages. So what we try to do is work with our partners to see what other, with the money, the small amount of money that they receive from FEMA, we can bring in volunteers and do those repairs. Put in that door, repair the roof. And that money, that's $6,000 will be stretched to buy the material if we bring in the volunteers, which there are a lot of them, and they're eager to help and to build again. There'll be in the coming weeks numerous discussion in reference to what are we going to do with folks in the floodplain and folks not in the floodplain. But if you do not have flood insurance, FEMA cannot assist you in that area. I know that was a question somewhere there. We cannot. The individual had to have an active and paid up-to-date flood insurance in order to qualify under the flood insurance program. So what we have to do is be innovative and try to bring all our resources and minds, and how can we assist that survivor so that they can, our key is to restore normality so that folks go back to their homes, they go back to the schools, and the infrastructure is open. I talked about a little bit about the public assistance program, where we'll be ready when it's scheduled to do the, we'll be talking with the emergency managers, the city engineers, to identify those damages so that we can take notes of those damages, meet the threshold that's required under the public assistance program, and then turn on the categories from C through G. The state will lead the applicant briefing, and they'll give a thorough briefing in reference to the requirements. One thing I should note, that if you do any contracts, that you have to follow the federal regulations, so that is very key in reference to contractors. And FEMA does not encourage the citizens to go hire that is not our job. That is an individual choice. But we do caution that, and that we caution people is to make sure that FEMA, we don't have anybody representing FEMA that comes up and says, hey, I'm with FEMA and I'm going to charge so-and-so. We don't charge for anything. So if anything like that is identified, please direct it to the local law enforcement, because that's fraud, and we don't want those individuals to be abused in that way. So we talked about the registration process, the number of ways of registering. The priority to get those individuals is for them to indicate their needs, get them into a rental property, or participate in the transitional sheltering program, or others in working with the Red Cross and other partners that we may have. But an appeal, I can't emphasize the importance. I know some people get frustrated, angry, but they have to, appeal. And if you have any questions in reference to that, then we have folks that can assist you and walk you through the process in meeting those questions. But again, in Cumberland County, right now we have 8,298 folks that have registered. Up to date, we have approved $7.8 million for the county. And as I mentioned, the Disaster Recovery Center, we're looking at this facility, Department of Social Services. In this county, we have 78 applicants checked into hotels, and 2,300 are eligible. Again, what we've done is look on the map, and there is, as you know, very limited on the east side of the state in reference to hotels. A lot of the hotels to the west. So that is something that we have to work together. We recognize it. The state recognizes it. So we have to work together on how we're going to assist these citizens, and so that they can get back to their homes or have a place to stay in order to until they can get back to where they need to get back. So that concludes my briefing, subject to your question.
Do have a couple of questions.
Yes, sir.
Councilmember Wright.
I just wanted to understand, sir, thank you for being here and helping us through this. You made a statement that if you don't have flood insurance, you're not eligible for FEMA relief.
No. What I referenced to the FEMA flood insurance program.
Okay.
You have to have an active flood insurance.
Right.
But it does, that has nothing to do with the individual household program at all, sir. It's two separate programs. There's the flood insurance, the federal flood insurance program. Is separate from the individual household program that FEMA has.
Okay, so if a person has flood insurance,
Yes,
they got flooded
yes.
during Matthews, you still give them assistance up to a certain amount?
Absolutely. Upon the inspection and upon determining what is covered under their existing flood insurance, they will receive a portion of whatever is deducted.
Okay, so those people that are not in a floodplain
Yes.
but got flooded and don't have flood insurance,
Yes.
you work with them as well?
Yes, sir. Absolutely. Absolutely. That falls under the individual household program, so we would assist them.
Okay.
Yes, sir.
Thank you.
I apologize if I can
Yeah.
misstated that.
Yeah, it sounded like if you didn't have flood insurance, FEMA.
Oh, no, sir. I missed it. That's totally separate programs.
Separate program.
Two separate programs. Yes, sir.
Thank you.
Is there a guideline or any measurement on what that assistance may be for those individuals that do not have flood insurance?
Again, it depends on what the inspector determines in reference to making the house safe, secure, and sanitary. It's basic repairs that is done and approved. Now, the key thing is for that individual to fill out that SBA application so that if they don't qualify for that loan, they go into the other needs assistance. And in those cases, they receive additional funds. So it's very good. I cannot state, and that's one of the, because if you do not fill out that application, it stops right there.
Thank you very much. No further questions. Appreciate you being here. Thank you very much. Our last speaker is Mr. Dave Trago from PwC. Welcome, sir.
Thank you. I'll just give a very brief update. I did give an update on Monday to council. Just let me give you a brief picture of where we were and where we are. Like I stated on Monday, we had at peak about 40,000 customers without electric service. We're down probably around 200 or less. These are homes that are in a state of repair and have the electric service shut off for safety reasons. They're waiting for an electrician to go there and make repairs, and then the city inspector goes in, the city inspector calls us, and we go and restore power. That number is going to be fluctuating over the next couple of days because we're now finding properties that the power is restored, it's up to the meter, or perhaps the electricity was never turned off because they did not have an outage, but the home did sustain some damage to the electrical system, and the city inspectors are going in and determining that we need to temporarily shut off that service so they can make repairs. Again, we're acting out of a real sense of safety for our customers and making sure that we do not have a situation where someone can get hurt. So we're currently doing that. Basically, our system, we have power to every street in the city at this point. So electricity is available to all customers. Those that are off either need to have repairs made to their home, and if there are any that are out, call us, and we'll be able to assess that situation very quickly. We're pretty much done with the temporary repairs. We did triage to get everybody power back on so we could start the recovery effort. Now we're going back to those places where we need to make permanent repairs, and we're doing that. And if it's going to involve power being turned off for a short period of time, we will inform that neighborhood that we're doing that. We're moving forward with that right now. Our water system, essentially, our water system flows have returned to what we would term near normal levels. We're still finding some small leaks here and there. We have lifted, as of Wednesday, the boil water advisory. The mayor also lifted the mandatory stage 4 conservation measure, and we are currently, as of Wednesday, on voluntary water restriction. As of tomorrow morning, we will be lifting the voluntary water restriction, so customers will be able to use water for all purposes at that point. We are still seeing increased flows in our wastewater plant like it was spoke to earlier. We still have areas that are flooded. We have the water table that's rising. So we are getting a lot of infiltration into our wastewater plants. We're experiencing about 20 to 30% higher flows than we would normally have during this period of time. But we are out there operating our plants and getting them operating really where they need to be. On the vehicle side, as was mentioned last meeting, there was a number of city and PWC vehicles that were damaged because of the flood, some of them on site in parking lots, some of them as they were responding. There was a total of about 71 city vehicles that were damaged. Of that, 20 vehicles sustained significant damage and are still being assessed and have to see if it's worthwhile making repairs or replacing those vehicles. 30 have already been returned to service. Some may have some follow-up work to be done, but we do have them in service during this period of time to try to get them back on the street. And 19 are still awaiting parts or repairs. PWC had about 20 vehicles that were damaged, 8 significantly. 10 are back in service, and the rest of them were just waiting for some parts. So we're making significant progress there. We had one building at the PWC campus that was damaged. Our substation and electrical meter shop had about 12 inches of water in it. So we're having to temporarily relocate those employees. We're tearing up carpet and making repairs so we can get that building back in line. But like was spoken to earlier, you have to worry about mold and everything else. So it's going to be a little bit of time. One question that council did have was what we were going to do to help out our customers during this time, and let me go over some of those things. During this period of time, the commissioners have authorized implementing waiving all reconnection fees, temporary service fees, and those type of things. So if a customer has to move out of their home temporarily because their service has to be turned off and repairs have to be made, we will not charge a connection fee when they move to the new place, nor when they move back to their home. So we're going to be waiving those fees over this time period. So customer just has to call us up and let us know that they're moving temporarily because of the flood, and we will waive those fees. We've also granted our call center representatives extra flexibility in helping customers during this time. This is one advantage in having a hometown utility. You can give individual service. Instead of having one set of rules and saying that's the way it is, we want to work with our customers individually. Like we talked about, they're going to be waiting for grant money. Their checks may not have been delivered by the mail service. Some customers may need 5 days extra. Some customers may need a month extra. So we're going to work with our customers on an individual basis to try to meet their needs during this period of time. We've also temporarily suspended doing disconnections for customers who've had problems before paying their bills. When we start reinstating that, we are going to be making outbound calls to those customers, reminding them that they have a past due notice, and that again, if they have difficulty or they need extra help, to call PWC and we will work with them on an individual basis so we can again help them during this very difficult period. We're going to be extra flexible with our customers during this period of time. We're going to give them every benefit of the doubt and try to work with them so we could help this area get back on its feet as quickly as possible. And since we may have people watching, I'd like to give our number out so if they do have an issue that they can call. That number is 910-483-1382. It's a number that's on our website and in the phone book. If they have any difficulty, call up and one of our representatives will work with them on an individual basis to help them out. So I'm open to any questions that council may have.
Councilmember Art.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. And Mr. Trago, I'd like to thank you very much and your staff for all the great effort in working so diligently to get our power restored back in a very, very timely manner. As a liaison, you helped me connect with South River and with Duke and with Columbia Electric because we have people in the city that have those power systems, not necessarily PWC. And certainly PWC was way ahead of the pack in getting power restored. So I want to commend you on that. But I want to commend the other groups too for working very hard to get their power restored. Can you share with us maybe some other power companies that came down and helped support us that we might want to formally thank? Well, I asked the mayor to thank, we did have the city of Wilson. Even though they were doing their own repairs, they had the ability and saw the impact that we were having. And they sent down 11 line workers to help us out, support. And then once we got to the point where we could release crews, we reciprocated and we sent some crews to Red Springs. Another thing that we did, by the way, Councilman Arp, is Once we got our water system back up and we got our pressures near where we thought we could do this, we opened up a bulk delivery system for nonprofit agencies and other agencies to come in and fill tanker trucks to help out here in Cumberland County as well as down in Robeson County. You mentioned the Baptist Men's Mission. They came and filled up their tanker truck a couple of times. The National Guard filled up a couple of times. So we just set up a place and let it be known through the county that we did have a place that if somebody needed to get water, they could. Yeah, excellent job. And I also want to commend Carolyn Justice Henson. She did a really good job of pushing information out to the public, and that was very key with the water issue as well as the power issue.
Facebook, social media, like you mentioned before, it's amazing.
Yes, sir. Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Mr. Deviere.
No, sir, I'm good.
Mr. Colvin.
Mr. Tragos, I appreciate it. I don't think I had a question for you particularly. I was kind of seeing if there were any others, but if there are any others before I make this motion so we could kind of end in a timely way. Maybe Mr. Chris.
Mr. Mayor, do we have anyone here from Aqua Water? Anybody here from Aqua? Because I'm getting some down and dirty complaints. Mr. City Manager, have we been interfacing with Aqua? Because I'm getting complaints from people that are serviced by Aqua that they don't know, the citizens saying they don't know whether they need to boil water. They're getting very little information from Aqua.
Do you have anything on that, Scott? We'll check, sir.
Appreciate it.
The last information I had, because I got copied on one of their news releases, was they issued a general news release to the state rather than for their individual areas. And it was basically, when in doubt, boil water, and I didn't see anything after that.
And neither have citizens. Thank you, Mr. Trago.
You're welcome.
Thank you, Mr. Chris. Mayor Pro Tem.
Mr. Tragos, this is not for you specifically, but I just want to thank you and thank all of the departments of the city and all of those, the gentlemen from FEMA and from the state for what you've done to help make our community whole again as we continue down this difficult road. And with that being said, I think I heard enough from FEMA to get a better understanding as to what the individual assistance levels and processes were, that there were limits on the grants, that you're just trying to basically make it safe and sanitary and secure, not necessarily bring them back to the levels that they were pre, which showed me that, and then Councilmember Hurst, example that not all people will qualify for it. It's not an automatic qualification. And one of the things that was a concern of mine that I mentioned to council and to Mr. Sharp and to Mr. Hewitt was that we wanted to make sure that we didn't have any citizens that fell through the cracks during this difficult hour. And so with that being said, I would like to move or make a motion that maybe Mr. Sharp work with staff and with Mr. Hewitt to come back with a little more specifics on the 24th so that we can, as Councilmember Chris alluded to, make sure it's not a lengthy process for assistance with our citizens, but have something ready to go for council so that we, to be on standby as we determine our role in this thing, just to make sure our citizens are covered all the way around. So I wanted to put that in the form of a motion, Mr. Mayor.
Second.
Seconded by Mr. Deviere. Questions on the motion, council? I see none. I'll ask for your vote, please. Madam Clerk, that is unanimous by members present. Mr. Arp.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. One last thing that I would ask that the manager do, and by the way, I want to thank the manager, Mr. Hewitt. What a baptism by fire, and or by water, yeah. You severely got dunked. But thank you. I appreciate it, and I truly appreciate all the efforts of our staff, the county staff, all the agencies. But this, I think, a critical thing, and I know everybody is really kind of trying to get back to a relatively sense of normal work schedule. But have we worked out an after-action review process for how we're going to AAR all the events of the past 2 weeks? And, I mean, we've done a lot of good things, a lot of very effective things, but I also know there's probably some things that we need to, in retrospect, one of the things that we talked about earlier was the switch capability. Mike mentioned that at our shelters, but there's probably other things, lessons learned, that we need to capture. Are we planning to do a major AAR like that?
Yes, sir. That's on our task list. In fact, I know of several departments that have them already scheduled from the departmental level within the city, and that'll be rolled up into a larger one.
I'm gonna go ahead and finish it up.
And we're capturing things as we go along. I've had things personally sent to me along the lines as
Okay.
we go. And we'll put out an all call as things settle down in another week or two. My approach is citywide, all city employees and anybody out there that you represent, by all means, if there's something they wish to contribute, we want to make it holistic, not just confined to our services.
Okay, thank you. Good idea.
I'll go to Mr. Crisp.
I think that that's very on time, Mr. Art. We did that following the tornado, but I like to refer to it as lessons learned, because we all need to put all of these lessons that we've learned into one bucket and make them available to everybody so that we clearly understand the areas that we need to improve upon should we have this kind of disaster again. Thank you, Mr. Bullitt, for your diligence and your work, all of you. Can't thank you enough. Know you've lost a lot of sleep. Stay the course. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Wright?
I know we didn't hear from Chief Kelly, and I was just wondering if there was an increase in crime or anything of that nature outside the norm because of the flooding or in the storm. Some wood? Yeah, knock on wood. Yeah.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor and Council. We've had about 4 businesses that we attributed to the power losses, but, no crime would have been great, but 4, I'll take that. We had a press conference the other day about fraud, and we did have 2 guys that we were looking for, and unfortunately, that one of those guys had struck prior to our conference, our news conference. He hit a soldier for a significant amount of money. We have what I said we were going to do. We were going to run him. He's hiding. He has called us and said he's wanting to negotiate his surrender. So we are negotiating that as we speak. So other than that, sir, we fared fairly well.
All right, thank you. Outstanding. I appreciate that, Chief.
Chief Kelly, since you're up here, give us 30 seconds on that fraud and scam.
Yes, sir.
Advice?
We cannot illustrate enough, and I think we talked about it earlier, is that, we're in desperate situations, and then we become desperate, and we're crunched with numbers financially. So we start looking for deals individually to make sure our homes our vehicles are repaired. But, you have to stop and take time to listen to what's presented to you, things that are solicited to you without, your input. Someone knocking on your door saying, hey, I can fix your roof for this amount of money, giving me 10% down. Absolutely not. You go to local, reputable businesses, and if you are approached through the phone or through a person or through email, things of that nature, and you're unsure, you can call the police department, and we'll try to help you vet those folks that are trying to do the work. The mayor and I went and talked to folks from inspections. We put the website of the licensing board on our website and the city website to get information. If you're unsure, if you're uncomfortable about the people you're about to deal with to repair your homes, just like I cannot illustrate enough, just stop, think about it, get a second, get a third, get a fourth opinion to make sure that this person or persons are reputable doing business.
Thank you, sir.
Yes, sir. Yep.
Okay, Mr. Art.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. As you know, the Hurricane Matthew is going to have a lasting impact on the city of Fayetteville and our residents. And so with that, I would move that the council allow the manager and staff to do the following. 1, authorize the city manager to suspend parking time limits for hourly parking until December 2016 in areas impacted by the storm. 2, that we lift zoning and time restrictions an additional 6 months on portable self-storage containers, for example, pods or those types of storage containers, to allow families and businesses to store items while renovating properties damaged by the storm and when actively working with proper building permits. 3, that we waive all storm-related repair permit fees through December to aid property owners and to prevent scams, as Chief Kelly just alluded to, and substandard work by contractors. We would suggest, or I would suggest, that all property owners require contractors to obtain these fee permits so that they can verify that all contractors are licensed by the state of North Carolina and that the work meets the requirements of the North Carolina Building Code. And 4, that we waive recreation fees and residency restrictions for youth who are in our shelters so that they can participate in parks and recreation programs while they're displaced from their homes. And then finally, 5, that we issue fast day passes to shelter residents through the Red Cross or DSS so they have a means of transportation to get about and take care of the items they need to do to get back into their residencies.
Second.
All right. Proper motion made by Councilmember Arp, seconded by Councilmember Wright. Is there discussion, council? Seeing none, I'll ask for your vote, please. Mr. Arp, that's unanimous. Madam Clerk. Council, before I take that last motion, I would like to ask our city attorney, she's got a couple of guests, if she'd like to recognize them.
Mayor and members of council, I have this evening, my children have joined me. Lauren, who is 10 and as she would say, a senior in elementary school. So she's in the 5th grade at Long Hill Elementary School, and then my son Jalen, who is 12 and who attends Pine Forest Middle School, or when I went there, it was the junior high. So.
Glad to have them join us. Council, I'll go to you for action.
Motion to adjourn.